welcome again to Public Perspective. As you know, if you've watched this show for a while, we like to have guests who have an interesting spin on something that might not seem initially like it fits together. And tonight, our guest, Alan Matthew, is a venture capitalist and investor, and more than that, a shaman-investor. Now, there's two things you wouldn't normally put together in the same sentence.
Well, not necessarily. It's actually a growth industry.
Well, what is it? How does that work?
Well, we've got a certain amount of time. That might be a more of a novel, but
we'll take the short story version.
Yeah, or a novel idea. So, shamanism, you can call it medicine man, you can call it personal growth. It's a way, it's a perspective, it's a way of looking at life, and it's when I talk to people about work, what are you working on, right? And most of the time I say me, right? I mean, you can kind of figure out, that's a bet over here, that's a financial thing over there, right? But it all boils down to people, right? And as an example, J.B. Pritzker has a fund conference. He's had two now, and it's about a year and a half in between. And one afternoon, Carolyn Collins, who's over at UI Labs, was interviewing some pretty big dog fund type investors. And she got to David Bradley at the Huizinga Fund. And, Carolyn said, David, what do you look for when you make an investment? And he says, well, 20 years ago, I would have told you it was the tech. And today I have to tell you it's the people. And I called him a couple days later. I'm like, thank you, because I've got, I keep pretty good records of things, and I've got these 3-ring binders, right, 5-inch, with the names of all the companies I've invested in. You want to make me happy, give me my label maker, right, because I can,
right.
blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And I look over at them, and I'm like, okay, what worked and what didn't work, right, and break that down. And over a period of time, I mean, it's the David, Bradley answer. It's people.
And, I have read that about venture capital. Even the big funds, the guys out in California, they invest in the people, not, yes, the business matters, but primarily what they're looking at is, do I believe that these people have the passion, the, what we used to call in school, the stick-to-itiveness?
Yeah.
Can they stay with it?
Yeah.
Can they weather the hard times? And can they be flexible enough to get over whatever curveballs are thrown their way?
And so how do you know, right? Somebody who's been a seasoned investor can probably say right away, well, that's, whatever, baloney.
Right.
And however, in the digital world, there's, I could start to, you can just read the news. X company raised $60 million, they're out of business. X company raised over $10 million, they're out of business. And it's like, the people believe that they were, they're
onto something.
Yeah, and there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in the digital world.
Well, there's just a lot of ideas that seem good but don't play out. They seem like they should work, but for whatever reason they don't. There's not a market for them.
But here's the thing: I got to tell you, it's not the idea; it's the person.
Okay.
You could take probably the mediocre idea, and with the right people, make it work. Because here's the conundrum that I've run across, and again about the people. I live my life on the trading floor. And
you started as a commodities trader, correct?
Yeah. Traded soybeans most of the time, primarily soybeans, other things. But somebody would bid for 100,000 bushels of beans, and somebody sells it to them. You own it, right? You own it.
Right.
There's consequences to that, right? There's a chain of responsibility. So the trader has to be guaranteed by a trading house. The trading house guarantees that guy's trades, and I had a couple of bad spells, and I know that people, there were some traders that left a big problem for the trading houses
because they couldn't meet their obligations.
Right, and it was all very transparent, right? It was right there. I mean, you got a profit and loss statement every morning, and with your account balance on there, and I really like to learn about what's going on in the community, and I take a deep interest in the people, and uh, you know,
Well, so how do you determine that? I mean, and this may bring us back to the question of
yeah,
shamanism
yeah. Well,
and
right.
learning.
Get back to
So
it.
so you meet a 3 or 4 24-year-olds, and they've got this hot idea, and they come to you and they say, "This is the next Facebook. This is really it."
Usually, the next Facebook, you kind of want to say, okay, there's the door right away. You know what I mean? But
Yeah. Or the next big thing, whatever it
yeah,
is.
right.
The next Bitcoin platform,
Yeah.
the next thing,
Yeah, well,
blockchain
that is the
platform.
next big thing. So
Right.
Ethereum and right.
Yeah, right. Whatever these.
It is the next.
It
big
is the
thing.
next big thing. Yes, I've looked at those. Um, so how do you know who's got the ability to pull it off? Is it young guys more likely than old guys? Is it married guys,
Well,
single guys? I mean,
that's actually funny how you went through the generations there. I would tell you this, that let's go, take the Wayback Machine 8 years ago. Um, all the younger guys thought that they were the guy. And what they found out usually through pain, was that when they brought in the older guys as partners or as an advisor or mentors, it kind of started to smooth the path a little bit. Not that you're gonna necessarily guaranteed a hockey stick kind of move,
right.
but they're sailing without any kind of like idea where they're going.
Or just having guys who've had some failures under the belt.
Yeah,
Which,
right.
teaches you, as you learn a lot more from your failures than your
Yeah,
successes.
hopefully.
Well,
hopefully,
if you pay attention, you should.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So.
So back to
Yeah, the young guys come in. How do you know whether they've got it?
yeah, it's I what I've learned is, I mean, I've made some, just just well, so there's a company I invested in called Packback Books, and they were on Shark Tank. That was my first company on Shark Tank. I've had a couple, and but it's funny. I think they're 21, 22 years old. Mike, Shannon, and Casey, and they're telling me that they had this idea. It was to do college textbooks digitally online, where you could rent for one day.
Yeah.
I mean, not to waste a lot
Yeah.
of time, but
Yeah.
they actually interviewed 800 students. How much do you spend per semester? 400 some dollars on average. How many books? And then they said, on average, how many times do you open the books?
Before the midterm and the final.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give me your answer.
I'm
Take a guess.
10 times in a semester.
4.
4.
4. You paid $80 for a book you open 4 times.
Yeah.
So why not pay a daily fee, which would accrue to you buying the book? Now, I look at things as far as what is the intelligence that we're gathering. To me, that was an intelligence gathering system, because right now, Apple's already applied for a patent to track your eyeballs when you read an iPad or one of their products. This is quantum physics this is a whole other subject that we're going to go into. So I looked at that, and I think Mark Cuban looked at that too. But now they've pivoted. They've done a whole other pivot. So you asked me, why did I invest in that? First of all, I did think it was a good idea, although that, like I said, it's a major pivot. But they were working. They were students, and they had jobs, and they weren't entitled.
They knew that they had to work for this.
Right. And I was like, I said, how much do you need to get this thing started? They told me. I went into my office, got my checkbook. I handed him a check without a contract. I said, just don't fuck me up. I'm sorry, just don't screw me over, right?
Yeah.
Just don't screw me over. And quality guys.
And they haven't. I mean, this trust has been born out.
Quality guys.
And that I want to focus on that for a minute, because one of the articles you sent me talked about trust in business. And in so many cases, people think, oh, that's just naive. I mean, you can never do things on a handshake, or even, people's word isn't worth a dime.
What's the board of trade?
But yeah, I mean, because you were trading with guys on the other side of the pit, and it's all hand signals, and you got to have faith that these guys are going to come through, right? So it's something that seems lost in today's world of business.
So I mean, again, I mean, don't get me started here, but there's another trader in town who's also, he actually just started a fintech fund, Jeff Carter, and he was at the CME, I was at the CBOT, and, you know, every now and then we'll, you know, nostalgia, the whole nostalgia thing, and, you know, we say, you know, there'd be some guy that, you know, you could spot, there were troublemakers, we were self-regulated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there were some people that always seemed to have a problem. And, you know, some guy would owe you, you know, pick a number, you know, $5,000 or something. And he'd go for weeks and not pay you. And, you know, you would literally yell out his name. He'd be standing right there. You would call out his name. You would scream to 300 people that he was a dirtbag and that you shouldn't trade with the guy because he doesn't pay his debts and he's a loser. And now you walk out into this world. I mean, I got sued for libel because I said in Cranes that money is gone. Now, how does that happen?
Did they prevail or did you win?
Well, of course it was. I mean, his first attorneys said this is ridiculous, and they
throw it out.
They petitioned the court to get rid of
it.
Right, and then he came back again, and then it was like, nah.
But still, just even having to defend that is.
I mean, yeah,
ridiculous.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You got Tribune and Sun-Times and Cranes. I'm like, come on. I mean, I don't have a response to that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing. I'm not going to like.
Right.
You know, have a comment. What are you going to comment about?
So in the pit, when you'd call this guy out, and then his reputation would be damaged, right? But
you know, you know, again.
But it enforced a certain discipline where you had to follow through, right?
Well, it was out in the open. I mean, look, and you know, there's a little plug, but it was very tribal. Mm-hmm. So there would literally be 350 bodies in the pit, or in a big market, 400 plus, and there were pockets, right? Because we traded in monthly increments. Mm-hmm. So the January would trade here, and the March would trade there, and November would trade over here, right. And so there were pockets of brokers and traders and all around. So he may have partnered up, or you know, with the other people in his, you know, scumbag drive, so, right? Right? And you know, but you know, it's when you get out into the digital world. I mean, I can tell you that I sat, you know, at dinner with a couple of, you know, startup guys that I'm involved with, and we were talking about a company that had just taken a bunch of money. And one of the guys was laughing. He's like, yeah, you know, we both have got, you know, all these fake Facebook accounts. And we're bouncing likes around, you know, to get our profiles up. And there's bots now. I mean, you can write a piece of code, and this is where this is the issue with digital advertising, right? There's just an absolute, like, I'm not even sure what you want to call it, but collapse, rebirth. Who's figuring out how do you make money doing it? Because somebody builds a piece of code, and you hire his firm to, you know, to get your profile up there, and it's all fake.
Yeah, it's all phony traffic.
It's all phony traffic.
Right.
So who's going to pay for that?
Well, until you know it's phony, a lot of people pay for it.
Yeah.
This is part of the scam. Just on New York Times, just what it was a couple months ago, had an extensive story about that, about the fake traffic and how it's generated and how people actually paid for it. And this is why a lot of these advertisers have pulled back from even the big sites.
Yeah.
Because, well, they object to the content in some cases, but they also don't trust the numbers.
Well, I think it's just accepted. It's like, you know, the whole world accepts a minimum of Facebook. A minimum 10% of Facebook is fake.
It's just
minimum.
That, you know, I mean, I understand that everyone has to deal with the world as it really is. But think about that. I mean,
I know. Could you imagine 10 fake traders in the soybean pit? For 10%, it would not have worked out very well.
Yeah, the market couldn't have persisted, right?
No.
So in startups, then, come back to that, this role of trust.
Yeah.
Once again, you have to be able to get a read on someone like these guys who you wrote the check to. you knew, yes, they worked, they were going to school and putting themselves through school because
Yeah.
they're working, but something told you that you could write a check to these guys and you wouldn't get stiffed.
Well, so here's the thing. So you know, think about it. Let's say you buy soybeans or corn or wheat or whatever, and it goes down. I mean, what are you going to do? Yell at the soybean market? I mean, you made a mistake, and
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
it didn't
Yeah.
work out.
Right.
So the thing that is to me is the sad thing. It's a sad thing, right? Because you bought the guy's story, right? You bought the guy's story, and when something doesn't work out. I mean, there's one guy I invested in, and boy, he put so much time and effort into that. And he called me in on a Friday afternoon. I had no, can you come meet in the office Friday? I'm like, okay, well, I'll go over there. He's on the west side of the loop. And he sits me down like this, and his other co-founder was there, and the guy's in tears. I'm like, what am I missing?
Yeah,
Like,
what happened here?
his cat died or something. I don't know. And he goes, I just got to tell you something. He goes, we're out of business. Now, I had thought that the company was being bought into, and he goes, and I've got so many of these, this company that I invested in was being bought by a larger company. The larger company got bought by a much larger company in that whole process, and they said, the terms of the deal are, we
don't want these guys.
Yeah. And so they were out of business almost overnight. And he goes, you're the first investor. I'm practicing my...
Because I have to tell a lot of
my
people
Harry
this.
Carey speech.
Right.
And you know what? I looked at him, I'm like, no problem.
It happens.
No problem. And I went home, and I spent like 2 or 3 hours, and I sent out emails to some big dogs that I know. And I said, in case you got anything, you got to hire this guy. And he was working 2 weeks later.
Really?
Yeah. He told me he got the job on his own, which I believe. But, yeah, I mean, he was a rock star. It's...
Well, something else in one of the articles you sent me, you talked about networking and the power of networking amongst people who really have specific skills and experience, so that when you're working with the startup companies, you can plug them into these guys who've been around the block a few times and know what's going on.
Yeah.
Right? And so here's a case where you found this guy.
And that aren't liars.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a valuable commodity, especially today, in today's day and age, where truth seems to be fungible, right?
Most of the floor trading is closed, right? And, there's been a couple of times I've met somebody who's told me they were, a trader on the floor. And so I know what kind of questions to ask. And, a couple of questions in, I'm like,
That's not, you're not telling me the
I go
truth.
down to the exchange, was so-and-so ever... No, she was a clerk or something. I mean, it's like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Are you serious? And I think, because I'm sure, you told me about your investing. I'm sure that you ran across, like, for the longest time, every few years, somebody'd come to me and they'd say, look, this guy's got a currency trading program. And, it's pretty much he's paying out like...
I've lost money on those.
Seriously?
Yes.
Oh,
currency trading. You bet.
Come to me next time. So... And there's been, I don't know, I probably could count 4 times, and I keep saying, no, look, it's trading. There's nobody going to guarantee you a 5% a month return. And they're like, oh, it's only...
Except Bernie Madoff. Right.
Right. And if it's only a little bit of money, I'm like, please. And you know what? And it's like, now I guess, I was a trader was, one of those, right? It's going to get... But, I mean, it's just like... There's another one in they're probably going to figure this one out, but the garbage one where they took, you use this high arc energy to burn garbage, and the energy that's produced by burning is more than you use to, and it's like, that one's been around for 15 years. Hopefully they'll figure it out, but, I mean, there's just these certain things that I'm like, how many times have I heard that, right? And so anyways, to get back to, to get back to the people, and so my comment, they got a check right then. It's working out, right? But also some of the best bets I've got going, it took a little more time.
To play out, to figure out whether or not they're really onto something?
Well, just to get to know them a little bit better.
Hmm.
And I've like I said, I've talked to fellow investors and ex-traders about this. Because everything was right in the open, right? You've got, let's again, 300, 400 bodies or 500, right there. That's information that's real time right there, right? And I believe there's a space. There's a space for picking up the phone and saying, hey George, what do you think of so and so? What do you think of that?
Mm-hmm.
And the guy may say, well, I gave, the guy's flying to wherever, China, around the world, and doing all these things. And on Facebook, he looks like he's the guy, and he's like, I gave him 10 grand 3 years ago, and I keep asking him what the deal is, and he keeps telling me, oh, gotta believe, and it's like, this is this nutsy digital world.
Well, and it's so invisible, and because so much of it relies on high tech that very few people understand.
Yeah.
So there is that leap of faith that you have to take in any case.
Right.
Right. And so I would think in these cases in particular, if anything, I mean, I think you're correct. The investing in the people has always been important, but now it's probably more important than ever, because 50 years ago, someone has whatever it would be, a tool and die plan or whatever.
Yeah,
you know what that is.
Right.
You can see it. You understand it.
You were an apprentice. You learned how to do that. Yeah, you could use the machines.
Right. But today, all of this is bits and bytes flowing through the internet that no one ever sees. And even, like, for example, we were talking earlier about blockchain. I think one of the interesting things about that technology is you cannot see it. Websites, when the internet was new and your website, you could call up a website, you could see what it looked like. But some of these, like blockchain technology, that's all behind the scenes. You can't call up a blockchain page and see it.
So I had this conversation with a man that is running some state programs and was talking about using the blockchain to create more transparency in government. And so blockchain is, it's one of those power words, I guess you could say right now, right? Like 10 years ago, nanotechnology.
Right.
And
or peer-to-peer.
Huh?
Remember when peer-to-peer was all the rage? Yes.
And so I said to, there's Alan Treeschreim used to run Argonne National Labs, and then he decided to create this thing called the Chicago Science and Technology Committee. And I'm telling you, they do amazing good programs. You should get them on, get them on your program. Yeah. And so I think it was 3 years ago, he had a guy give us talk on nanotechnology, and I went up to him afterwards. I'm like, you're the first one that's ever been able to talk about it in a way that I think I understand. Because everybody would talk about it and you'd say, okay, Kevin, explain nanotechnology to me.
And they couldn't do it.
Right, or explain Bitcoin, blockchain to me. And they're like, well, it's this thing, and you do all that, and you have, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, believe me, I've watched the YouTube videos for, 15 hours, right? And I'm still going,
I'm not sure I understand how this really works.
Yeah, I mean, you're creating a moment in time, right? You're creating a digital address. And there's value to that digital address because it's distributed and everybody knows where it is. It's like having a map, and that's where the gold is, right there, right? That's where it is. It's never moved from there. It's always going to be there, and everybody in the world has that same map. And when who was the big IPO we just had with Chris Glavin?
Oh, I couldn't tell you.
God, I was in that. It was real fun. But anyway, so we just had $1 billion exit, and this was its storage. This is fascinating because I saw him talk, and I went up afterwards, and it was storage where the more data you collected, the faster the network worked.
Wow. Because
they break it into pieces and they distribute it to different sites. And when you want to call it back, they bring it and piece it back together. So it's extremely safe because somebody could hit this site,
Yeah.
Could crack that site, and you're only going to get this piece of it.
Which may be replicated somewhere else.
Right.
So you can always reconstruct the whole thing.
And so there is something to this, and when you start to think about it, when I get pitched by these startup guys and they're like, blah, 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 I got this idea, and I'm like, fine. I said, what I'd really love for somebody to come to me and say, look, we got a way to fix government. You know what I mean? We got a way to fix government. We're going to start here, right? We're going to start with this one, right? Thinking that we can scale this up, and it's going to be in distributed transparency or distributed responsibility. You're going to know, right, when you hire that construction company to do this mile of road or whatever it is, we're going to know exactly how much electricity we're using on the highways at night to power those. I mean, we're going to get those metrics where we can measure them, because so much of it now is really unmeasurable. I mean, you've got Windy City or City Digital. Chicago is like opened up and said, okay, look, we're going to give you this data. We're going to give the community the data. What can you build for us? What can you build?
Sure.
That,
the city and the county both do that.
Yeah.
Here's all the data. Have at it.
Traffic congestion in downtown Chicago. Believe me, there's a lot of people praying for that one, right?
Sure. Where are the CTA buses right now?
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
Right.
So the technology, I think, is fascinating. But again, it brings us back to this leap of faith kind of idea.
So that's so let me go on another tangent here. So bringing back to shamanism and ayahuasca, which is a medicine in the Amazon. It's called a hallucinogen, but the indigenous people call it a medicine. And in December, I had maybe 15 minutes with, I'm not going to bust the guy's name, but let's just say he's a billionaire in the city of Chicago and has some very well-known, successful companies. And he was asking me about ayahuasca. And I said, it's a technology.
Interesting.
I said, everybody, this word technology that's another buzzword now. I mean, the pyramids were technology. I mean, my contacts are technology, right? I mean,
the horse and buggy were technology.
That was technology.
The wheel was
right?
Technology.
The steam engine. I mean, there's nothing new. It's just that right now we're starting to blend the physical world with the digital world. So I'm going to M-Hub. Do you know about M-Hub?
I am not
familiar.
It's a
60,000+ square foot digital manufacturing space in Chicago, 965 West Chicago. So get this. They took over Motorola Mobility's building that had laid vacant.
So you got about 30 seconds to finish that thought, and we're going to be out of time.
Okay, so it's technology. The physical world is blending with the digital world. And as human beings, we live in linear time, and this is exponential time. And for me, the shamanism and the going deeper inside it is to be humble.
Let me stop you right there, because I can't think of a better way to summarize. Be humble. Right. Ellen, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I hope you'll come back. So stay right there, and let me talk to the camera. We'll be right back. So thank you for joining us on Public Perspective. Our guest has been Alan Matthew. I'm your host, Kevin McDermott. You can see us every Saturday night at 8 on Comcast Channel 19, and catch us on the web at publicperspective.tv. So until next time, thank you and good night.